god, his endings are so good. They're just so good. Like, it makes me literally, I was squealing reading this book. I would still highly encourage anyone who hasn't read it to read it. I gave that 4 stars, enjoyed it, just didn't understand what the hell was going on. What? 2 books in 1 year? Crazy. Hello and welcome back to another video. My name is Kizzy and today I'm going to be doing a wrap up of everything that I read in 2021. And it's not the biggest list, I think it's 26 books, so my Goodreads goal was 50. But seeing as I didn't really read from the months of like May to September, August, September, October, October maybe, let's say it's October. It's pretty good. I had a mediocre reading year. None, like, I had 1 or 2 like amazing books, which I will talk about at the end. I have like my top 4 to share with you at the end of the video, but there was like maybe like one standout book for me that is just, it blew my mind. But I'm going to go through some like the stats and stuff and things, and first I'm going to go through every single book that I read, just very quickly, and give you the star rating. It won't be like a huge discussion because I think I've done a wrap up at least for every single book, so they will all be linked down below. So yeah, you can, if you want a more like in-depth at the time thoughts, I would check out those for the ones that you're interested in. But from the start of the year, we have a lot of books that I was like finishing off for my degree. So we have the Oresteia by Aeschylus. This is the only surviving Greek trilogy, ancient Greek tragic trilogy theatre thing. I enjoyed it, gave it 3 stars. Then we read a retelling of the Oresteia by Icke, I think. I gave this 4 stars. I can't remember anything about it now though, not gonna lie. Then we have Great Goddesses by Nikita Gill. This is a poetry collection retelling ancient Greek kind of stories about goddesses. I gave this 3 stars. It was just a little bit simple, a little bit not my kind of thing, I don't think. I use it in my dissertation. Then we have The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker. This is 5 stars, phenomenal read, you have to read it, it's amazing. Then we have Witch by Finbar Hawkins. Gave this 2 stars, probably my worst read of the year. I didn't enjoy it at all. Then we have the Iliad by Homer. This was translated by Stanley Lombardo. I gave this 4 stars. Enjoyed it, was quite an easy one to read if you've not read it before or you're not familiar with the story or haven't read many translated pieces, ancient Greek pieces. I thought his translation was really accessible and easy to get through. So then we have The Mask of Mirrors by M.A. Carrick. This is, I think, like double, like duo, what do you call it? Duo written by 2 people together, but under the one pen name. And this was one of my most anticipated reads of the year. It didn't quite live up to it, I think, because it is like really weirdly complicated for like I didn't understand a lot what was going on, but I would like to actually reread it, especially before the next one comes out. I'm not sure when that will be. Yes, the next book is The Liar's Knot, and that comes out, oh, it was published in 2021? 9th of December 2021. What, this is already out? I swear that only came out in like 2021. I swear that was a new release. Yeah, the first book only came out in 2021. What? In stock, published 9? Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's actually out. Okay, so the next book is already out. Didn't even know that was out. That's 2 books in 1 year. Crazy. But I suppose if it's 2 people writing it, maybe it gets done in half the time. Who knows? I gave that 4 stars. Enjoyed it. Just didn't understand what the hell was going on, basically. Then we have the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin. Gave this 5 stars. This is another great start to the series. We'll get to the next one in a minute. Wasn't the biggest fan. So this is in like reading order, roughly. Then we have the Bone season by Samantha Shannon. I gave this 3 stars. I think I actually originally gave it 4 stars on my Goodreads, but I don't have fond memories of reading this. I don't feel like I enjoyed it. Felt like I should have enjoyed it a lot more. Then we have Oathbringer by Sanderson. This is my favourite book of all time at the moment. It's the 3rd in a series, but like actually like the 20th in a massive long kind of reading order of the Cosmere. So it takes you a while to get there, but it was just so good. So good. Then we have the Mime Order, which is the 2nd book by Samantha Shannon, and I gave this 2 stars, so yeah, did not enjoy this either. Then we have Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. Gave this 4 stars. I thought this was a great little YA fantasy, and I'm excited. I think the next one does come out this year as well. I'm excited to continue on with that one. Then we have the Obelisk Gate, which is the 2nd book in N.K. Jemisin's series. I gave this 3 stars. I didn't enjoy this. I felt like it was a very middle book and a little bit kind of dry. I haven't got to the 3rd book yet, so hopefully it will pick up again. Do want to finish the series though. Then we have the Gilded ones by Namina Forna. This I gave 4 stars, 4.5 stars actually I would say. It's a great YA fantasy and would recommend. Then we have Assassin's Apprentice by Hobb. This is the 1st book in her Farseer trilogy, which is the 1st trilogy in her like many trilogies that she has in the same world. And I gave this 4 stars, 4.5 stars. And thoroughly enjoyed it. A little bit slow at times, but the ending was great, and for such a small book it felt like there was a lot of world building and development going on in such a short amount of time, so I very much enjoyed it. Then we have a reread for me. It was Ember and the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. I read the first and the second book, A Torch Against the Night. I gave them both, well, I gave the first one 5 stars, the second one 4 stars, because they're just, it's such a great series. I did kind of lose my momentum a little bit at the end of the second book. I was trying to read them, or all of the series, to then read the last book. I didn't quite make it. So we'll continue on with that this year, hopefully. That was also when my reading declined and vanished into nothing, because then I had a huge gap of many months, and then I read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I gave this 4 stars. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed this because I'm not a V.E. Schwab fan, but I liked it. I liked it. Then we have Wolf Den by Iliad Harper. This I gave 4 stars. The next book coming out again this year, and also we're going to continue the series. Then we have Empire of the Vampire by J. Kristoff, another great fantasy, paranormal fantasy, I suppose, book. It's a tome. It's a massive book. It's like chunky, but it's so worth it. You've got to give it at least like 150 pages, I would say, before it starts getting really good, but then it does just get good. So, would recommend. Then we have Medusa. This I gave 4 stars. It's a short little retelling of Medusa, that kind of takes a little bit more of a feminist approach and kind of picks out the unfairness of the original myth of Medusa, and how Medusa was treated, and it's just a very short and sweet and beautiful book. It's fully illustrated. Would recommend. It'll only take you an evening to read. Then we have Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb. This is the second book in her Farseer trilogy. Didn't enjoy this one quite so much. Did take me a little bit more to get through. It was a little bit slower. Not a lot of plot happened, but I gave it a good solid 3 stars. Then we have The Sanatorium by Sarah Pearce. I gave this 2 stars. I didn't dislike it as much as my other 2 stars. I think actually originally I gave it like a 3 stars, but I lowered it to 2. It just didn't really make a lot of sense, and it was a bit poorly written, if that makes sense. That probably sounds really horrible. I'm not a crime fan anyway, so I don't think I'm the best one to give my opinion on this. If I'd read more of the genre, maybe I could give you more of an opinion, but I did enjoy it, so that's purely based on my own enjoyment. Then we have Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. I gave this 4 stars. It's a nice retelling of Ariadne. I'm excited to see what she comes out with next, which is her Electra book. Very excited for that one, actually. Then we have The Hatmakers by Tamsin Merchant. I gave this 5 stars. It's another one of my favourite reads of the year. It was just so wholesome and lovely and such a good story and so fun. Loved The Hatmakers. Would highly recommend. It's just great. And then the last book that I read, literally finished it on the 31st of December, is Midnight in Everwood by M.A. Kuzner. And this is a retelling of The Nutcracker. I gave it like a 3.5 stars, 3 stars. It was enjoyable for a wintry read. Some things annoyed me, but overall, it was a good story. So, going into the statistics, the fun stuff of the video, I'll go over the Goodreads one, the My Year in Books one. So I read 26 books in the year of 2021, and that was 11,924 pages. Mainly I think because of Oathbringer, which was my longest book of the year, and that was 1,248 pages. Technically I did read them one after the other, so yes I did, but I didn't. The UK editions are split up into 2s, so I read one and then read the other, but I did read them one after the other, so I technically did read it together, but in separate tomes. And then the shortest book was The Oresteia by Robert Icke, the retelling of The Oresteia. That was my shortest book at 96 pages. I think it's actually a play, if I remember correctly. My average book length in 2021 was 458 pages, which is actually quite low. Most of my books I would say were at least 500 pages long. So my most popular book on Goodreads was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, which I'm a little bit shocked by. I thought Sanderson maybe would have been up. Oh no, I suppose no. No, maybe not. Sanderson's Apprentice, yeah, that could have been up there. Ember and the Ashes, that's quite popular as well. Then the least popular is obviously Robert Icke's Oresteia. I don't think anyone's heard of that. Very few anyway. The highest rated on Goodreads is, of course, everyone has good taste for Goodreads. It's Oathbringer. So yeah, those are the Goodreads stats. I'll now go on to my own stats. I read 7 genres across the year. That include crime, historical fiction, fantasy/paranormal, and then just plain fantasy. Then we've got ancient classics, classical retellings, and poetry. I don't really know if classical retellings, are they technically history? I don't know, but I've separated them. And it's giving me the percentage. 3.8 was crime, aka 1 book. 3.8 was historical fiction, aka 1 book, which was Wolf Den. Then we have 11.5 is paranormal fantasy, which I think is 3 books. So we've got The Bone Season, The Mime Order, which is the same series, and then Empire of the Vampire. Then we've got Ancient Classics, which is obviously the Iliad and the Oresteia, and Classical Retellings, which is Oresteia by Robert Icke. I suppose Great Goddesses could have gone into that, but I put that in poetry instead. And then we've got The Silence of the Girls, and I think that's it for classical retellings. Oh no, we've got Medusa, obviously, and Ariadne. Forget the most recent two that I've read. And then we've got poetry, which was Nikita Gill's Great Goddesses. So kind of varied. I would like to get more classics in there this year and more non-fiction, because there's no non-fiction on there at all. So I would like one of my goals is to read a little bit more non-fiction and a little bit more classics. Next we have kind of age separation. So mainly it was adult. I think 69.2% were adult. We had a couple young adult fiction, which was 26.9%, and one middle grade, which was 3.8% of my reading. So I would like to read more middle grade. I work in a bookstore now, and seeing a lot of the covers and the stories and stuff, it's made me, it's never a section that I've gone into voluntarily since I was much younger, but just working in it, like a lot of the stories just look so fun, and the hat makers, it's made me want to read more middle grade. So that is a goal as well, to kind of like delve into that a little bit more. Young adult, again, it's not a genre that I read very often now. I do tend to be drawn towards adult fantasy. We'll see. I'm not too pressed to read more YA unless I really want to. I had a couple rereads this year, which is more than I know. I don't normally reread books, so it surprised me how many I had. I think I had 3, which is a lot for me since it's normally 0. So I reread The Silence of the Girls for my dissertation, thoroughly enjoyed it. I think I preferred it even a second time around, and it is another book that I will reread again. I can't see myself ever getting rid of that book. And then obviously The Ember and the Ashes and Torch Against the Night. I'm not sure if I will reread those again though. I think once I'm done with that series, I might be just done with that series. We'll see how good the last book is. We'll see, because that is like one of my original, I don't think I'll ever get rid of those books though, but it's one of my original kind of reads, fantasy reads that I ever read. So it has a special place in my heart, and I've got the Illumina Crate editions and they're just gorgeous. So then the last kind of stats that I have is my star ratings, and we have a lot of 4-star ratings. That comes out as the main one that I've given, and that is 42.3% of my books were 4-star ratings. So that's pretty good, mainly because I enjoyed a lot of books, but I didn't love a lot of books this year, which is when I give them 5 stars. Only 23.1% of my books got 5 stars, which is funnily enough the same amount as I gave 3 stars. So my 5-star reads were Silence of the Girls, the 5th season, Oathbringer, obviously, Empire of the Vampire, and The Hatmakers. 3, 4, 5, Ember and the Ashes as well. I don't think I said that. I would think I gave Ember and the Ashes more of a nostalgia 5 stars than like an actual 5 stars, but I still thoroughly enjoyed it. Then 2 stars, quite a lot of 2 stars actually, 11.5. I don't normally go that low in my ratings, but there was 3 I think on there that were 2 stars, so there you go. So we've got the final installment of this video, and that is my top 5 books of the year, and they are starting off with Silence of the Girls, which is a reread, yes, but it was still phenomenal. I would still highly encourage anyone who hasn't read it to read it. I still need to read The Woman of Troy. I'm a bit nervous to read it because I don't know if I'll have the same thing as Silence of the Girls did, but we'll see. We'll see if it does. It is on my imminent TBR, so we'll see. Then we have Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson. This is the ultimate. This is, if we ranking in a hierarchy, this one is at the top because it was just so incredible. If you haven't delved into Brandon Sanderson and you love fantasy, he's just phenomenal. Start with Elantris. I enjoyed it. I think it's a very underrated book of his. Not many people seem to encourage people to read that as the first one. I loved it. I would say read that as the first one. And then you've got the Stormlight Archive. It's just so good. It's just so good. I just love him so much. And Oathbringer is just like, oh my god, his endings are so good. They're just so good. Like, it makes me literally, I was squealing reading this book. He's just phenomenal. Just read it. Okay, moving on. Then we have Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. This is actually a 4-star read, but it still made it into my top 5, even though I rated Ember and the Ashes higher. But I don't think, because it's a reread, I think Assassin's Apprentice like is stuck in my mind more than rereading Ember and Ashes, so it deserves a higher place in my top 5. If that makes sense. Does that make sense? I don't know. But it is in my top 5, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I would recommend. I didn't enjoy it, I don't think, as much as I was hoping to, because I know a lot of people love this book and this series in general. So I'm hoping to grow a little bit more attached to it when I read the third book, because I feel like I've lost my attractiveness to the series whilst reading the second book. I feel still like really interested in the third book, and I will read that hopefully within the next few months. Like, I'm wanting to read it sooner rather than later, because I know if I put it off I won't get to it. So whilst I'm still it's still in my head, I want to read it. Does that make sense? So that I'm still on the kind of Assassin's Apprentice train. But we'll see how it goes. I did thoroughly enjoy Assassin's Apprentice though. I really enjoyed the characters, the world, the interesting magic system. I'm hoping for a little bit more plot in the third one, which I feel like because it's a third book in the trilogy, it has to. Like, we've got to find out what these red ships are. Like, we just got to know by now. Like, I need to know. We'll see. We'll see. Then we have Empire and the Vampire by J. Kristoff, another phenomenal book. It is just like, I wasn't keen, like when I heard it was vampires, I just went like, what? Really? Really? I wasn't one of those people, you know, people like got really excited that it was vampires and they're like, vampires are back. No, I wasn't one of those people. I'm over vampires, but these are good vampires, like not good vampires as in like good vampires, but like they are interesting vampires. They are based a lot more, the squirrels outside. These are a lot more based on kind of, I would say like Icelandic saga kind of vampires, if you've ever delved into those. So they're kind of a lot more based on traditional vampires than, you know, like sparkly vampires. So there's a lot more interesting, and the book itself is like, there's illustrations in it, and J. Kristoff's writing has kind of got that snarkiness a little bit still. It does maybe take you a little bit to get into, that's my only problem, but it's like a tomb of a book. Like, it's like a lot of pages. I don't know how many. It is a lot. So you kind of do have to give it that time. Like, you don't go into a book that big and expect to like fully be engaged with the plot until at least 100 pages in. I always give books 100 pages anyway, but with a big book like that, like, you've got to give it a while because it's got a lot of ground to be building. A lot of building has got to be built in that world because it's an entirely new world and very complex and intriguing, and the characters are very interesting characters. So, very good book. And then we have my last book that is my top 5, and that is The Hatmakers by Tamsin Merchant. Just love this book, it was so wholesome, and I will be recommending this to everyone who comes in looking for a children's book from now on in the shop. So there we have every stat and book that I read within the last year. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know how your year went. I've got big expectations for myself next year to be more consistent with my reading and filming and uploading, and just kind of allowing myself the time, basically, instead of getting worked up about work, to do this and read because I love it and I missed it. So that's my goal for the next year, is to actually allow myself time to read and enjoy it as well. So hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know how your year went below, and I'll see you in the next one very soon.